We're about to go live.
Alrighty.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Better get high and tight.
All right. Welcome everybody. We are live.
All right. Welcome everyone.
Woo-hoo.
Like Marianne said, we are live, so please watch your language. We appreciate that. Thank you for joining us today for the community update. We're excited to be here. We're excited to have our speakers with us. Many people are asking who's putting this event on. It's actually put on by the real estate power team of Temecula Valley. Marianne has a slide that'll show all the different people that are part of this real estate power team. You'll see them scattered throughout the screen. We have Bill Provost with Franklin Loan Center, Marianne Sharp, most of you know, with Lawyer's Title, Celeste Descharme, Garen Parker with New Season Properties, John Ruff with Ruff and Ready Moving, Lisa Wayman, Corner Escrow, Lloyd Mize with Coldwell Banker, Richie Perez with Richie's Termite and Pest Control, Scott Peterson with Home Perfect, Tiffany Cross with Dedicated Credit Repair. She's super busy, as you guys can imagine. And then myself, Matthew Smith with Trust Home Inspections. I'm excited to be the moderator today. The reason that I actually stepped up was because I've actually lived in the Temecula Valley since 1989. So for those of you that don't know me very well, I've been in Temecula Valley since '89 when it was actually Rancho, California. And I've went to school here. I graduated from Temecula Valley High School, like some of the other people on the call. So I'm excited about that. So yeah, I'm just really passionate about the city. I actually right now live in Murrieta. I've lived in Murrieta for the last 3 years, and I just love our valley. So I'm excited to hear about the updates that are going to go on. Today we have some amazing speakers with us. In order of how they will appear, we have Mr. Gene Wunderlich, Emily Falappino, Patrick Ellis, Tony LoPiccolo, and Elizabeth Cahue, Chi. And we are very appreciative of you guys and your time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. A couple of housekeeping items. Please make sure you mute yourself. And also, if you're going to be moving around, we understand people have to move sometimes. Or if you're going to be out and about, if you wouldn't mind just turning off your camera, that way it doesn't distract other people. We would greatly appreciate that. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We do have people monitoring the chat. And our goal is the last 15 minutes or so, we're going to be doing questions and answers. Okay. And then last but not least, people that like to take notes, such as myself, we will be sending out a recap email to everyone that has registered as well. And that'll have contact information and the bullet points from today. So you can always reference that if you need to. Okay, so we're going to get started. Mr. Gene Wunderlich has a call to get to, so we're going to let him go first. He is currently the mayor of Murrieta and the VP of Government Affairs for the SRCAR. A little bit about Gene. Gene Wunderlich is an advocate for private property rights, home ownership, and business issues. He serves as VP of Government Affairs for the Southwest Riverside County Association of Realtors and legislative liaison / executive director for the Southwest California Legislative Council. An area resident for 30 years, Wunderlich also serves on numerous local, state, and national boards, including vice chair of Southwest Healthcare Board of Governors, president of Temecula Valley Players Theater Group, director of the California Association of Realtors, land use committee member of National Association of Realtors, the Murrieta / Temecula Group, and is the past appointed member of the Murrieta City Council. Holy mackerel, how special is that? So Gene, in 10 minutes, you got about 10 minutes or so, if you could please give us an update about the city of Murrieta and what's going on in regards to the real estate market. We would love to hear your wisdom.
Let's do that. Thank you very much for that introduction. I don't know where you dug all that stuff up, but appreciate it. We're having some fun. Oh, I just knocked myself offline. Good Lord. There we are. Okay. I'll try to make this quick. I've got a lot of stuff to cover, so I'm going to start with just the local market, the local real estate market, which most of you are immersed in now. But if you get my newsletter and so forth, you know that through the first quarter of this year, we were actually on pace to have our best year in probably the last 4 or 5 years. We started off very, very strong, January, February, and then March. March, things kind of, started to fall apart a little bit, but we were still strong close in March. And then April, the chickens came home to roost. It wasn't as bad as I initially thought it was going to be when I did a report about 3 weeks into April. indication was sales were off about 40%. We actually across the region ended up with sales down only about 19%, so that wasn't too bad. And the good part of that is prices were still up. Prices were up 2% month over month, and we maintained a 7% advantage over where we were at this point last year. So that's a good thing. That's something to be happy about. And as you'll see through the rest of my report on state and national issues, we seem to be right on line with where the real estate market is going right now. Inventory, of course, is down. Inventory is at its lowest level in probably the last 5-6 years, but we've got fewer buyers chasing. So that keeps demand at a fairly steady pace, and it keeps the pressure on pricing. We'll see how that ends up going forward. We're down to about 2.1 months worth of inventory pretty much across the region, and things were flying off the market. Average days on market was down to 16 days. A year ago, it was 64 days. Some cities, Temecula and Menifee, things were flying off the market in an average of 9 days on the market. So the market's moving quickly. From the California Association of Realtors, recent update says the data is ugly. Obviously, big hits to unemployment, consumers, general GDP, impacts across California housing. We don't know exactly where the bottom is yet, but there's some indication that we may have actually reached the bottom already, both in the real estate market and the business market. And as the governor has recently, just in the last week, turned about a 180 in terms of getting businesses open. Riverside County is pushing to make that happen sooner rather than later. We may start to see some relief on that front as early as this coming week, with more of stage 2 opening and hopefully a quicker opening for some of stage 3 businesses. And I'm sure that Emily and Patrick and Tony will have more updates on that as they sit on a variety of regional task forces as well. So short run outlook is, that it's we're looking at probably our second quarter here is probably going to be the worst. Third quarter, things will start to pick up a little bit again. You've all heard the different recovery prognostications, varying from a V-shaped recovery, a big drop, a very short time at the bottom, and then a quick recovery. Some have modified that to be a U-shaped recovery, spending a little bit more time at the bottom. And then some have started talking more recently about a swoosh-shaped recovery, like the Nike swoosh, which is, again, the quick drop-off, but a more prolonged recovery time. Congressman Calvert said that obviously one thing that the federal government is good at is they're the only ones in the country who can print money. And they are continuing to do that at a fairly rapid pace, and will continue to try to do that, as he indicated, because what they need to do is to inject some, a sense of security back into the national environment. So what we've experienced so far, the biggest drop in housing starts since 1984. Industrial production is the lowest level since 1946. Nearly 5 million properties across the country are currently in forbearance. And that's going to tell a tale down the road as well, because depending on how lenders and services handle those forbearance issues, if they get 90 or 120 days into it and say, you owe us a balloon now, and there's no negotiation on that, it's going to be problematic. And we will see an increase in short sales and REOs. We've not seen any indication of that so far, but again, we're just starting down this process. So we'll see how that forbearance process treats it, as well as the rental market. Renters are able to not pay rent right now, and so that's going to leave some property owners hanging out in the wind as well. What some of you have seen, interest rates. One thing that's driving the market right now is interest rates are at historic lows, back down to historic lows, and we actually may see rates drop even lower. I heard one yesterday on the radio, 2.875% on a 30-year fix. So there's still room, and the Fed still has room to maneuver in there. And so we're going to see that, and that's going to help drive recovery once we get back on our feet here. As Dr. Lawrence Young pointed out to us the other day, our chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, what we're looking at is, he said, keep in mind, even if unemployment hits 20%, and in Riverside County, I saw this morning, they're forecasting it may hit 30%. But even keeping that in mind, if we have 30% unemployment, keep in mind that means 70% of people are still employed. That means there's still demand for housing. Those people are working. They still need to move around the country. They need to change jobs. They need to do whatever they're going to be doing, but they're going to continue buying houses. So even when the market is bottomed out, there's going to be a market for real estate out there. And that low interest rate is driving a lot of that business right now. What we did do last month for the first time in 10 years, we just ended the longest recovery period in our country's history, a little bit over 10 years. And that was poised to continue because, again, you have to remember that the underlying economics of our market, not just the real estate market, but our entire economy, the underlying economics were exceedingly strong coming into February and March. So the recovery should have continued for probably another 2 years at least. Unfortunately, that train came off the rails back mid-March. And so the 10-year recovery came to a grinding halt. And again, how quickly that picks up will be anybody's guess. Where there are no concerns about inflation right now. Inflation will be held at bay at least for the remainder of this year, probably into next year. Here's the concern of that, obviously, is when the Fed continues to print money. And the latest, they've already handed out about $3.5 trillion. And the newest bill back there that the House just passed on Friday, the HEROES Act, proposes to add another $3 trillion to that. So the ultimate result of that coming down the road is eventually we will have to hit higher inflation. So they're saying in 3 to 5 years, inflation rate could be back up in the 4 to 5% range. Again, nothing too startling, but when we've had 2-3% inflation the last few years, 4 or 5% inflation rate looks like a lot, but there's no inflation worries for right now. Home prices, again, pretty much nationwide, they're 8% higher than they were a year ago. Locally, we're about 7% above where we were a year ago. They're forecasting that will continue, but it will be slower. They're saying this year, depending on who you follow, they're saying anywhere from one says 0 to 2%, one says 2 to 4%, but they are anticipating that prices will continue to appreciate, but at a much slower pace than they have before. Mortgage applications and pending sales are actually back up, and I hope some of our local lenders are seeing that. I know some of that activity, with interest rates being so low, some of that activity is going to be confined to the refinance market. But actually, mortgage applications hit a trough on about April 10th, and they've been ticking up for the last month. So again, that my earlier point that we may have already seen the bottoming out effect of this particular crisis, and hopefully things are going to improve. What else? Yeah, 30-year mortgage rates can fall further because super low 10-year treasury yields, and that's what drives that part of the market. The Fed obviously has dropped their rate down into the basement again, but the treasury yields still have some room to go, so we may see that. The problem right now is with jumbo loans; those are still a little tricky to pick up. The delayed inflation, as I indicated before, 3 to 5 years down the road, we're seeing a 4 to 7% potential for that inflation rate, and a potential for anywhere from 6 to 9% mortgage rates. So if you look right now and you're working with buyers out there and you're looking at a sub 3% mortgage interest rate, now's the time to encourage them to buy, even though the times are tough right now, because again, down the road, that will tick up. We had already forecast last year that interest rates this year were going to tick up into the 4.5% range. That obviously isn't happening based on this crisis, but ultimately those will rise up again. So it would be a great time if people are able and willing to purchase a home right now. Quarterly forecast, quarterly forecast for the second quarter. As of first quarter of this year, nationwide, they were forecasting annual sales of 5.48 million units, which was up a little bit over 5.34 last year. That has dropped off, predicated on second value numbers. That would now come in, instead of 5.48, it'll come in at 3.2. Later on in the year, they're anticipating again that to tick back up in third and fourth quarter to a rate of about 5.1 million. So it will be below last year, but it will be higher than anticipated, assuming everything picks up pretty much as they hope. And in the real estate market specifically, you know, you've already seen this impact our market. You know, the end of open houses. You're now doing virtual house tours. There's more remote working. And the other thing that we're looking at kind of long-term on this is, you know, the push the last few years from our state legislature and elsewhere has been to push for higher density housing, clustered housing in big cities, doing more of that high density development around transit clusters and job centers. And this may signal an end to some of that push, because more and more people are starting to realize, hey, if we're clustered in high rises, we're more susceptible to this sort of a virus. And so the indication is that it may push more housing out our direction. We are already starting to see a little push of that with millennial buyers who are coming into the market, because as happy as they've been living in high rises and so forth the last few years, as they start that family formation process, you know, they want to get a dog, maybe have a kid, they want a little yard, and that means they're for affordable housing, they're going to move our direction. So we'd already started to see that trending a little bit, and the indication is we may see that trend developing even faster as people kind of abandon that theory of high density housing where everybody's crammed together and everybody's taking the train together and all that sort of thing. So again, long term, the indication is that housing will be one of the shining lights to lead us out of this current recession, because you have to remember this is not an economic recession as we experienced back in 2008, 2009. This is a pandemic motivated recession. So the underlying reasons for it are very, very different than what we saw a decade ago. Indication is if we can get our country back on track, if we can get our economy humming again, that we should, and housing should be one of the shining lights to lead us back out of this recovery. So that will conclude my remarks right now. I'll be happy to answer any questions, or if you want to wait till later.
Yes, thank you very much, Gene. And I greatly appreciate you putting your phone number and email address on your slide. That's awesome that you're being available to everyone. That's not, you know, very common. So we appreciate that. Anybody that doesn't have any questions, if you can put them in the chat. Gene may have to jump off, but he has an email there, and then we can also follow up with him as well. I
don't have to be gone till 1 o'clock, so I'm here for a little while anyway.
Sounds good. Awesome.
Looking forward to the next presentations.
Yeah, great information. Gene, thank you very much. I really like the nugget of information. Let's focus on the 70%. You know, we may have 25, 30% unemployment, but let's focus on the 70%, because those people are still out there. They're still spending money. They still have, you know, the ability to buy houses. So I know for myself, I'm still busy. So that's good. So thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. So we are old school here. We're going to go ladies first, moving on. So a little bit about Patrick Ellis. He was, I apologize. My paperwork was messed up. So Emily is going to be first. Emily Falappino is the president and CEO for the Temecula Valley Chamber of Commerce. Her involvement within the local business community and service sector runs deep, with many affiliations and investments of time. Since assuming her role at the Temecula Valley Chamber of Commerce last fall, she has made it her mission to serve the best interest of our Valley's business community by connecting, engaging, and supporting every business she and her team can reach. And one thing I thought was awesome when I was doing a little research on Emily is she also graduated from Temecula Valley High School. So Emily, please take it away.
Thank you. And I will say, I love your chivalry and having ladies go first, but man, it is never easy to follow up after Mr. Gene Wunderlich. So, so Gene, thanks for raising the bar for me, setting that standard. I'm going to go ahead and see, I don't know if you guys can enable me to share my screen. If so, I'll put up a couple of slides that might make it easy. for everyone to follow along. If not, I'll give you just a couple of top level updates in terms of what's happening in the city of Temecula, what's happening at the Chamber of Commerce, and really how all of you can be a huge part of our forward recovery and progress. So it looks like you guys can see. I think that we're all going to hear a common theme as you go from kind of community to community. We're coming from a crazy 8-9 week period of question marks, fury, fear, a lot of confusion, but we're finally rounding that corner. We have a good sense of what has happened. We have a better idea of what resources are available, not that they're totally refined yet. And now we are focused on where do we go from here, and let's just get there already. So I personally am really thankful that at least in the city of Temecula, and I think all of our surrounding neighborhoods, we are all focused on reopening and recovery and revival more so than anything else. So for those of you who live or do business in the city of Temecula, you might have seen that the city has launched a new branding campaign. It's called Temecula Revive. They have a page on the city website that is a complete arsenal for individuals, businesses, employers, employees, and it's a repository of all the information you could want about how to access resources, help, assistance, and information to kind of get you through. They have put together a committee or a task force where we're seeing a lot of high-level collaboration every week between the school district, our industry associations like the Chamber, Visit Temecula Valley, our regional partners like the Promenade Mall, our local hospitals and healthcare medical professionals. And we meet every week to talk about the status of our respective areas. And we're looking for ways that we can continue to collaborate to better serve our community and our residents. As a city, we've tried to take a leading role with advocacy. There still seems to be a lot of confusion from business owners and residents who go, why aren't we open for business? Why can't we just buck the system? It really isn't up to the city to determine when we can reopen. We are still beholden to the county's public health department and ultimately the state of California. But the city of Temecula and the city of Murrieta, they just partnered up recently and they put together an amazing advocacy letter that asserts and says, we believe that all businesses should have equal opportunity to reopen. And certainly we support modifications and guidelines that preserve public health, but we really want our voice to be heard as all businesses deserve an opportunity to generate revenue, even if it has to be in creative new ways. I do want to point out that on this screen, if you visit their website, they have an area that invites your public comment as a professional or as a business owner. If you want to observe now. So that's a kind of a screenshot of what that page would look like. Also, I'm putting the cart a little bit ahead of the horse, but a lot of businesses have been asking, what about local funding opportunities? What's happening at the SBA has been, only semi-effective. We haven't seen a ton coming out from the county. A lot of the microloan programs are getting tapped out real quickly. So what else is becoming available and what's the city going to do? So I can share with you that the city of Temecula is currently working on multiple programs, both loan and grant programs. One of those programs, the Chamber of Commerce and Visit Temecula Valley are partnering up with the city on. So we are looking at one program where we'd like to make $1 million in grants available to our local businesses, and then a couple $1 million more in local infrastructure and local economic development. And then they are also applying for some other grant programs. So I think within the next couple of weeks, we're going to be hearing more about local financing relief for our business owners. In terms of what we're doing at the Chamber of Commerce, I mean, most of you are probably very well familiar with either us or another Chamber of Commerce. I mean, in short, we are exclusively focused on and honestly, we're just and the resources that they need. And in a time like this, our local businesses and our small mom and pop businesses, they are the lifeline for our community. They're what create our economic development, which creates a source for our local infrastructure and our public safety and our community quality of life. So it really implores us to make sure we serve you in every possible way. I can tell you on behalf of the Temecula Chamber of Commerce, we tried to take a very forward stance in sharing early on that we advocated for all businesses having an opportunity to reopen. For us as an organization, we have submitted public comments at every city council meeting, and we have also submitted public comments at every Riverside County Board of Supervisor meeting. And we have made it known what we're in support of, and it's all business friendly. We're hosting a lot of roundtable discussions between industry peers. We're facilitating a lot more of the local business to business supply chain as we prepare to discuss what reopening looks like. Our businesses are going to be hard pressed to come up with resources they've never had to before. It's not like you just get to go into the office and open up your doors. You're going to have to think of things like sneeze guards and hand sanitizer, and depending on the business, you might be questioning like, gosh, is my HVAC system set up and running? So we're really trying to create a local repository of all those resources and blasting out resource guides and helpful information to help our local businesses support the local ones get open again. And as a Chamber of Commerce, we are open to helping individuals just as much as we're open to helping the businesses. So we are a lifeline of support. You could call us if you're having problems with unemployment. We will leverage our resources to make sure that you get an answer and that you get resolution. The same things happens with businesses. There's a lot of question over, am I able to open right now? How do I approach reopening? I'm having a problem with rehiring my staff. You know, your chambers of commerce have answers for just about every question that you could come up with. So we are just extremely busy responding to the inquiries that are coming in, and we're available practically 24/7 via social media with that sort of thing. A couple of resources just to share with you. On that note, if any of you are fielding this question yourself, like where do we get more specifics about who's able to open and at what time? The state of California and the county have hotlines and emails designated to answering those questions. If you don't get an answer, I would suggest that you approach your Chamber of Commerce. We ask these questions on behalf of our members all the time, and I usually get a response within 72 hours from the state. So it's been immensely helpful. And like even just yesterday, we've had a business that was closed and she didn't think she could be opened, and she does more therapeutic pain relief, holistic massage services and that sorts of thing. And the state was able to say if she is really holistic and an alternative healthcare provider and focuses her practice on pain relief, then she can open. And it was just like fantastic, you know, a business owner got her answer. So we exist to just help expedite these sorts of solutions and progress. And with that, I guess I'll close out and just say, you know, all of us equally as employers, as employees, and as consumers, we all are going to be a huge part of the solution and our successful reopening. And a successful reopening doesn't just stop with the doors are open, we got the green light. A successful reopening is one wherein we're all open, but we're still preserving public health. And there's a lot of polarizing ideas on, you know, who's right or who's wrong or what should be required and what shouldn't. And I really implore everyone not to take a polarized position, but to look for the balance in maintaining public health and the progression of our economy. So we definitely want to shape consumer behavior, but part of that starts with how we shape our own behavior, how we communicate with the consumer, how we communicate with our employees. And I just implore each of you to just take a really active and responsible hand and voice in that. And of course, we want you to shop local. So that kind of wraps it up for, sorry, my dog's chiming in with the last word here, but that wraps it up from Temecula.
Thank you very much, Emily. Great information. You can really see how much you care and the chamber cares about our local businesses. So we really appreciate everything you do for us. So moving on now to the bearded wonder, Mr. Patrick Ellis. He has been in the chamber industry since 2007, starting as the president and CEO of Moorpark Chamber of Commerce in Ventura County. After producing many measurable improvements under the dynamic, shifting conditions in a downturn market, Patrick moved on to the Murrieta Chamber of Commerce as the president CEO in 2012. Patrick utilizes his boundless energy, great enthusiasm, strong leadership, and unmistakable trademark laugh, and his awesome beard to motivate his staff. Where together they have revitalized the Murrieta Chamber of Commerce. In 2017, Patrick led the merger of the Murrieta Chamber and the Wildomar Chamber into Murrieta Wildomar Chamber of Commerce. Take it away, Patrick. You're muted.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. I don't know if my beard actually motivates my staff at all. So I'm not so sure about that statement, but thank you. I appreciate that. After that, I think actually I just want to defer and give my 10 minutes back to Emily and let her just keep going because she did such a fantastic job. So great job, Emily. And thank you, Gene, for your update. Always great information. I am just going to kind of touch on a few different things that we're doing chamber-wise with our cities. Obviously, Emily kind of gave a bit of information, and Jean kind of alluded to that she and I are sitting on the Riverside County Economic Recovery Task Force. So we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes to help the county staff with, suggestions, input, recommendations from our industry, experts and such. And this is, everyone thinks that this is just like, we're only doing this until we get business reopened, but none of us read the fine print in our agreement to be on the task force, because the task force lasts for 18 to 24 months. So we all kind of were a little shocked by that one after we found out, but we're all happy to do this. We're glad to be integral in helping to get businesses back up and running. So there's more coming. I have a feeling that in this next week and a half, we're going to see a lot of information come out very quickly about reopening and what that looks like and the guidelines that go with it. And we've been working closely with the city of Murrieta and the city of Wildomar to try and, get those reopening plans in place, get the guidelines, get some really good suggestions. So we've been putting out as much as we can. Obviously, I think a lot of us in the chamber world have been relying a lot on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for some of our information, which they have been an unbelievable resource for all of us. They have kind of led the way on so many different aspects of what we're doing and how we're getting information out to all of you. So the work continues on the task force. We're working with the cities to get businesses reopened in a very safe and systematic way. And that's the critical part. It's not just reopening to just get businesses reopened. It's doing it in a safe and systematic way, both for, well, it's a three-pronged thing for the employer, for the employee, and for the customer or client. And that is the way we kind of address everything and look at it from the city and the task force standpoints. We at our chamber also run our, we're the management company for our tourism bureau, which is Explore Murrieta. Obviously that industry has taken a huge hit recently with hotels and those accompanying businesses down to 80 to 90% revenue wise. It's kind of decimated some of them, but we're doing everything we can to get them through this and to position them for re-engagement with the public and attracting people. And I think that, between us and working with Kimberly at Visit Temecula Valley, we here in South of Riverside County have a very unique opportunity to really engage people when it comes to getting back out very quickly, because we know that statistically people aren't going to be jumping on planes, they're going to be jumping in their cars. We have a huge amount of people that we can attract out to this area. We have safe, very expansive areas when you talk about the wineries and the plateau and the trails and everything that we have in this valley, that would encourage people to come and travel out here in a very safe way. Safe and clean are the two words in that industry that are key. So that's what we're focused on, and positioning all of our businesses to make sure that when they do reopen these different parts of it, that we're ready for it. We've been working on getting information out through a lot of different vehicles. We've been doing a lot more videos as of the last couple of months. So unfortunately, a lot of you have been forced to look at my face more than usual. But we're trying to get as much of that information out to you as quickly as possible. We just started a weekly, I guess, vlog cast, which is a vlog / podcast, called the E-Conversations. So we have all 5 of the economic development directors for the 5 cities here talking about economic development, trying to get the information out on that to the community, but also to get information out to those who might be looking at our area for expansion or relocation in the future. Our chamber was very instrumental in helping start what we were working on, which was called the Save Small Business Coalition. It was myself and Nancy Hoffman-Vanek, who is the CEO for the Greater San Fernando Valley Chamber of Commerce, started having conversations regarding the business interruption insurance. Obviously, there is no coverage under what's going on here, but there was a lot of discussion as to how do we help businesses, especially small businesses, navigate what's going on with the pandemic. So we kind of started getting other chambers. We found out that some of our counterparts in Oregon and Washington were having some of the same conversations. Long story short, basically, we created a coalition of chambers across the country. We're over 140 chambers now who are signed on to the coalition. We're now working with the ICSC, which is the International Council of Shopping Centers, which I think some of you may know about. And we have kind of come to a nexus of this idea of a America's Recovery Fund, similar to after 9/11, we had the 9/11 Victims Fund. It's what we're pushing for in the next legislative cycle in DC to get money out to businesses in a very quick manner. We're at the table basically representing small business. Most chambers across the country, 80 to 90% of our membership is small business. And I think most of us think of small business of like 100 or 50 employees or less, but you look at a federal level and they look at it at 500 or less. So if you kind of look at that, then it's really at least 90% of our membership. So we see that as hugely important. And then doing as much as we can with all of the businesses in the communities we serve. We're doing business roundtables with those who need help pivoting. A lot of different, just trying to create resources. And then I also sit on the county's workforce development board. So obviously, as things kind of move along here, getting people back to work is going to be critical. So the work of a workforce development boards and what happens there is going to be very critical to getting everyone back to work as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, we know that there are going to be those businesses. You know, I think everyone saw this morning, Pier 1's not opening their doors again. And so we know that there are going to be those challenges. And so workforce development is going to be a key part. So, and, you know, we all love that, you know, the term, this is a very fluid economy we live in now. But that is so true, is that everything is changing by the minute. And so we have to be ready to move at the drop of a dime. And that's the way I think everyone has to look at their businesses nowadays. But we're here to help every way and any way that we possibly can. So if anyone needs help anytime, please don't, feel free to reach out to us. We're always available. And again, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, Patrick. You know, I am seeing you a lot everywhere, and I greatly appreciate that. I love seeing your face, so that's fine. But it says later on in your bio, you sent me like a 5-minute bio, so I couldn't read it all because I wanted to give you time. But it says that you're married and you have 2 kids, but I'm not sure if they're seeing you at all right now because you're so busy working so hard on behalf of the businesses here in Murrieta and the Valley itself. I know you're on a lot of boards, and we greatly appreciate not only your time, but your expertise and your wisdom. So thank you very much for that. We appreciate it, even though you are a Dodgers fan. So then moving on, we're going to go to Menifee. Tony LoPiccolo is going to be our next speaker. Tony is the president and CEO of the Menifee Valley Chamber of Commerce. Tony's been leading the Menifee Valley Chamber of Commerce for the past 2.5 years. He has had a full career from being an entrepreneur in the family business, manager of a consumer finance company, manager of one of the top retail banks, worked in the residential mortgage industry, and is now working with the chamber. Tony has been associated with local chambers and served on several boards of various nonprofits in the area. Tony is also married. His wife's name is Leslie, and they have been married for 33 years. Congratulations on that. That's awesome. They have 2 daughters, 2 son-in-laws, a grandson, and their Jack Russell Terrier named Bassard, I believe. I hope I said that correctly. Tony, you're up.
Okay, thank you so much. Actually, the dog's name is Bashert.
Oh, I apologize.
That's a Yiddish term for meant to be.
Oh, there you go.
So, she's a rescue dog, and little throw out to animal friends of the Valley. So thank you all. And Emily, you think it was tough following Gene? I got to follow all 3 of you guys. So I don't know if that's fair or not. I got the short straw, but be that as it may, on behalf of our board of directors here at the Menifee Valley Chamber of Commerce, the City of Temecula's Economic Development Department, thank you all for having us here today to share our story here in Menifee. It's great to see some old friends. Sooner or later, we'll all get back together and break some bread, have some lunch, and have a beverage, maybe. So we were asked 3 different questions. So let's talk about the city of Menifee at this point in time. The city has been hit like other cities during this COVID virus 19. The city is looking at a $5.4 million hit to the budgetary impacts, to their budgetary impacts. This is all going to council on June 3rd. So we all know that this is, as Gene was saying, it's real detrimental to our business. We also have Measure DD, which is our sales tax initiative that was voted in a couple of years back. That's being seriously impacted, and it's going to the ballot for recall in November. So that will be a hit to the city if that gets recalled. Also, if it gets recalled, that'd be a direct impact on our police, our fire, and our infrastructure, and quite possibly on our businesses. So, you know, we're really big on the public safety here. That's why the Measure DD was passed. So let's hope we keep that in place. The city's still moving forward with projects as far as the residential is still moving forward, commercial as well. We've had, we've had another commercial center start grading last week off of Newport Road. Our theater, which was coming, still coming, and other projects are being impacted in the area by the lack of commercial lending due to the COVID virus. Cahue is like others. They've left to look at other commercial lenders still lending in this market. So our projects are still going forward. So let's hope that we continue moving forward with that. Cahue is working on his due diligence with his new lender. So that's good news. Overall, though, the projects are moving along, but these projects are looking at our market stability. So Menifee is still on the move. We're still out there promoting our businesses, and especially this being Small Business Month, we're helping promote our businesses in that fashion too. So what is the chamber doing? We've heard from my colleagues down south, Patrick and Emily. You guys are doing a great job down there with your chambers. Thank you so much. So we're working closely side by side with our economic development team. We put together a toolkit, a resource toolkit for our Menifee businesses. That is on our new website, it's menifeebusiness.com. You can check that out over there. We've also have a dedicated page for resources for the recovery effort, It's the menifeebusiness.com/Menifee Cares. This is about the disaster recovery resources that one of my colleagues talked about. So if our local businesses need that, please call your chambers of commerce. We can help you. We are resources for you. We've also created what's called Menifee Rewards programs to assist our essential eateries in town. That's also on our website. Maps of information for our businesses, where to go, how they can navigate this COVID virus. We're putting on workshops as well. We're still working with SBDC, SCORE to help those out. We're also doing our own Knowledge is Power, which is coming up this Thursday. Just get a little plug for that at 11:30. We started something new here at the Chamber. I'm not on as much as Patrick. I do see my family though, but we started Chat with the Chamber. That's a new Zoom that we've had that I interview a business. Right now, we've talked to all of our utility companies, and it's been on Facebook. It's not Facebook Live, but it is a pre-recorded. We have a watch party, so we have another one coming up this evening, as a matter of fact, at 4 o'clock. So please join us. It's with one of our local insurance companies. We're also working with putting out different surveys, as our other chambers of commerce have done, and getting feedback from our business community, seeing how we can help them as the chamber and what can the city also do. We get a lot of information from our U.S. Chamber of Commerce, from the city, CDC about this period of time. We're sending this information out, gosh, daily to our customers, our members, keep them up to date on what's happening, and again, the resources that are available to them. The city is looking into the community development block grants program for future emergency loans for both essential and non-essential businesses. So the city staff is working on that as we speak. The economic development staff has been doing the e-conversation with Patrick. And I've watched a couple of those, and very good, very informational, Patrick. Thank you for that. Also, the city has extended their agreements with SBDC to do it Monday through Friday, services to assist our small business. So again, we're doing those workshops, and SBDC is a great organization, and the knowledge that they give our businesses is fantastic. So thank you for that. Again, the city resource guide that we put together for our local businesses and residents. Again, that could be found on the menifeebusiness.com. And the thing that we want to actually bring home is what can the community do to help support our local business? We have the Small Business Month, which started on May 1st, but we're taking them for the whole month. We have yard signs that we've made up. They're free to our members or anybody that wants to come by the chamber, pick them up. More than happy to give them to you and put them in front of your business, put them in front of your house. Go out there and support small business. We have our eateries that are delivering, doing curbside. That's how we have to help support them. They've helped support us during the times when we needed them. So shop local, support them. And what we want to also put out there is please be safe. Please be careful. We want to get the businesses back open. Also, we want to get the community back up, our region back up, and we just got to do it safe and sane. So if you have any questions, the Menifee Valley Chamber of Commerce is open. Just like the rest of you, we are working remote, but you can always give us a call, give us an email, and we'll be more than happy to share our resources with you. Other than that, I am open for questions as well. Other than that, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today.
Awesome, Tony. Thank you very much. I love to watch Menifee grow, and they are just growing crazy every year when the mayors talk, city addresses. The things that are coming into Menifee are just amazing. I think even some of us, down here in Temecula, Murrieta, are actually driving up to Menifee because you guys have some stuff that we don't, so which is really cool. I really like the resource guide that you guys have as well, and I'll be checking that out online. So thank you very much, Tony, for that. We are going to go back to Gene Wunderlich real quick. He wants to give us a city update, and he's got a couple things to say. So, Gene, you got a couple minutes. Go for it.
Thank you. Just a couple minutes. Also wanted to let you know that the city of Murrieta, in collaboration with the Murrieta Chamber, has published, it's on our website today, but we also have a resource guide available for our local businesses on best practices to open back up as the state allows. As has been mentioned before, you know, we're not in charge of that. Everybody looks at the city and goes, well, why don't you open this? Why don't you open that? We can't do that as much as we'd like to. But I will tell you that if you're concerned about things or you don't see things happening, I will tell you that our local cities down here have been extremely collaborative with our chambers, but also our cities. Every Wednesday, well, this evening, six mayors from our local cities and our city managers are on a Zoom call every week, again, to determine policy down here, write letters, and that's primarily advocating at the county level. And so some of the changes that you've seen at the county level have been the result of that local collaboration. As well, this morning, sat in with 14 mayors from around Riverside County. And again, that's to put pressure on the county as well as the state government. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes that a lot of folks don't see. But I just want to assure you that, you know, just like Patrick and Emily sit on the Riverside County Task Force, Chuck Washington also has a third district task force. We meet tomorrow morning again. We meet every week on a Thursday morning. And that includes not only the cities, the chambers, but also tribal leaders, Pechanga, Saboba, and those folks are on there. Our local hospitals are represented, a number of local businesses, including our wineries. And so there is just a great deal of work going on behind the scenes that a lot of you probably don't see, but just understand that everybody is, it's like, you know, the old story of the duck out there. You know, a duck may look very placid, kind of going across a lake, but underneath they're paddling like mad. And that's essentially what's happening throughout our region right now. And everybody's working together and working very collaboratively to get our cities open up as quickly as we can. So with that, again, I appreciate the time, appreciate the updates from the chambers. And I'm sorry I have to leave you. I'm joining a call with John Giardinelli right now with the Department of Fair Housing from the state of California. And again, we're working on some of those issues like the temporary moratorium on foreclosures that have been proposed at the state level, which would be even more damaging to our industry and certainly more damaging to anybody who's a property owner as a landlord out there. Not good stuff happening at the state level. So we're going to be working with the Department of Fair Housing right now to see if we can address some of those issues that will keep home ownership at the forefront of what's happening out there, so that in fact homeowners and real estate are poised to lead us out of this recovery rather than being a drag as we were a decade ago when everything was falling apart. So again, thank you all very much. Appreciate the opportunity to come in and chat with you. Thanks to Patrick and Emily and Tony for all the work that our chambers are doing out there in the community. Absolutely invaluable in keeping our small businesses afloat through this. Some of them will not survive, but with the efforts of our local chambers, we'll keep as many of them in business going forward as we possibly can. So thank you all. Have a great day.
Awesome, Gene. Thank you very much. And be safe out there yourself. We appreciate all the information. All right. So now that we've talked to the chambers, they're definitely out there supporting our local businesses, small business, large business. And like Patrick said, our version of a small business is a lot different than the federal level. So a lot of people have employees. They're trying to get them back to work. Some people are running into issues where people are making more money on unemployment than they are actually getting paid. So they're running into that problem. So we thought it'd be a good idea to have somebody that actually does HR for a living come and speak with us. Today, we have the pleasure of having Elizabeth Cahue with us. She is the CEO and business owner of Cahue Enterprises HR Consulting. Elizabeth has a substantial background in business administration and human resources with over a decade of experience in the HR industry. Elizabeth comes from a background of administering PEO companies, which broadened her knowledge and skill set in a variety of business industries. Elizabeth developed a vision to help businesses to grow successfully and help them establish and develop a strong HR platform to reduce liability and leverage the companies to maintain a balance between employer and employees. So Elizabeth, please share all of your knowledge with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure being here this afternoon, and I hope you guys can obtain some information from this, my presentation this afternoon. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen so we can get to my part of the presentation. Okay, so let me go ahead and make this bigger. Okay. So as Matt did my presentation, today I'm going to be sharing tips for HR policies and guidelines that you need in your workplace before reopening. So that is me. I'm the owner of Cahue Enterprises. And before we start with this, my segment, I would like to give a disclaimer. Cahue Enterprises HR consulting only conveys general information and does not provide any legal advice. If you feel the need to consult with your legal advisor for any of this of my presentation, please do so. So today I'm going to be focusing on the Family First Coronavirus Response Act notice to employees. I'm going to be also talking about the COVID-19 sick pay and FMLA guidelines and regulations, layoff, recall, and hiring procedures, new OSHA and CDC guidelines, and telecommuting. So what you see on the left, that is the notice to employees, Family First Corona Response Act, also known as the FFCRA. This information has to be given to every employee that is going to be reinstated back to work, or if you're planning to rehire any new staff members. Employers that have even one employee have to comply with this federal mandated requirement. So this pretty much is touching all businesses and all sizes. And technically, the only exception for this is going to be the exception pursuant to the Department of Labor Wage and Hour, will be the healthcare providers. Other than that, everyone has to comply with this. This FFCRA was pretty much was launched on April 1st, 2020, and it's going to be through December 31st of 2020. Now that I have introduced the FFCRA, one of the recommendations that we're giving to every employer is to ensure that they have the right policies in place, such as the sick policy. The FFCRA is going to be mandating every employer that has full-time employees and part-time employees to provide up to 80 hours of sick time compensation, as well as extending any FMLA. So that's the reason why we are recommending for those businesses that don't have an established sick policy. It is very crucial now that those businesses do get one. And in that policy, make sure that you are differentiating the sick policy and the COVID sick policy as well. So one of the HR best practices, you have to make sure that you have the sick time policy. Make sure that you outline the accrued lump sum, the maximum cap, rollover terms, use of sick time, and guidelines. Separate the terms of your current sick time policy. And this is the one that it is mandated by the state of California. In the county of Riverside, employees are mandated to provide up to 24 hours, which this is aside from the COVID-19 sick time policy, which now they're mandating employers to provide up to 80 hours for full-time, or an equivalent of 2 weeks for employers that are part-time. This one has the expiration for COVID-19 through December 31st of 2020. And you have to make sure that you also have no terms and conditions in the use of this. I know that I'm going very fast on this presentation, but if any of you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to give you any additional information if this is new to you. Best practices to track and manage regular sick time and COVID-19 sick time is to ensure that you separate them separate them. Make sure that when you are compensating employees for the COVID-19 sick time pay, that you are doing it on a different code for payroll purposes. So please ensure that you are showing the differences of regular sick and also COVID-19 sick pay. This is a federal mandated requirement, which is also federal funded. So you are going to be obtaining a reimbursement through your payroll taxes. So make sure that you are very, specifying the difference between those two. And and also as part of the FFCRA, it is also talking regarding FMLA. For employers that have 50 or more employees, they have to comply with the state mandated requirement of providing FMLA. But also the COVID-19 has mandated employers, to comply with the FMLA. So make sure that you have those policies and that those policies are also showing the difference from normal FMLA and COVID FMLA. So let's get into recall process. I know there are a lot of employers are getting ready to reopen their business, but there is a lot of things that has to be done prior to doing that to ensure that employers are minimizing liability for their business. So one of the things that we are recommending is for businesses to do a business need assessment to ensure that you are getting ready to recall your key employees to come back to work. Once you determine who you will be recalling, a notice has to be given to all your employees. Whether you're recalling them or not, we are recommending for you to send the memo stating that your company is already getting ready to recall and that you are going to be sending separate letters to employees that are going to be the ones being recalled, just to ensure that you're following with the recall process that is, essential. Also, one of the things that we recommend when you send out your memo is for you to have a set date and time to return to work and to include the deadline for them to return for or forfeit their employment. This information must be mailed with a confirmation of receipt. So there is a process. If you're not familiar with this process, feel free to reach out to us. We will love the opportunity to serve you and to help you. And just to put a side note, for those employers that have qualified for the PPP, in order for them to get their loan forgiven, they have to meet the requirements of recalling their employees. So there is a lot of documentation that needs to be put in place in the event that an employee does not return to work because they might want to stay on unemployment. You don't know the reasons, whether if they don't want to come back, you have to have documentation to prove that you did recall them, in fact, to come back to work. One of the second recall process is employee protected class. Please, 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 at the time of recalling your employees, you have to make sure that you are not violating any of the protected classes, which you are seeing a list here. So make sure that when you're recalling that you're not considering to recall an individual and that falls under these protected classes, because that can lead to potential business liability for the business. Employers must consider employee protected classes before not recalling an employee or hiring someone in the place of the employee under the employee protected classes. Like I said, that can open the door for potential liability. So please make sure that you seek legal counsel before not recalling somebody that is under the protected classes. Assess workplace safety and OSHA and CDC. So one of the things that we are, recommending to employers are to do an assessment for potential risk for contamination and infectious disease. Right now with the COVID-19, there's a lot of, people being scared, so just make sure that you do assessment for potential risk of contamination. Also make sure that you have a work-related workman's comp policies, to ensure that if an employee, falls under a workman's compensation claims, they know the guidelines in how to follow that. Make sure that for OSHA and CDC guidelines, to make sure that employers are following the CDC guidelines as far as social distancing. I know that as of May 8 or 7, that requirement for face masks have been removed. They're no longer required. But one of the things is that as part of the OSHA and CDC guidelines, it is highly recommended that you do still create a policy and implement the face mask for employees that are going to be in front of the public to, and that is just as a form of protection and reduce potential, liability within their business. Policy needs to address, if an employee doesn't want to comply with that, or if a client is refusing to wear a mask, if your place of work is requesting for clients to wear a mask. So make sure that breaks are being staggered, so that way you don't have multiple people, multiple people of a large size, having or congregating. If you're implementing the guidelines for temperature check, make sure that you have a protocol in place to ensure that you're documenting those things. Housekeeping and so housekeeping, if you're going to be adding additional housekeeping to your workplace, make sure that you have logs that you can document those things, and also maintain documentation for the HIPAA compliance, just to make sure that the information that you're gathering from your employees are going to be on a private, on a different employee file aside from their regular employee file. Make sure implementations define OSHA policies for your business and convey the above guidelines. So that is just some of the recommendations we're giving to employers. And also one of the things is that personal protected equipment, it is highly recommended. This is going to be a big key for any potential workman's comp. And let's not forget that even though, we're still struggling with the COVID and we're trying to reopen, but we have to be cautious with, any potential work-related injuries. So we recommending for businesses to have, their safety policies in place as well. And this personal protected equipment has to be available to every employee when they are working on their shift, which are masks, gloves, goggles, face shields, hand soap, hand sanitizer, and additional any PPE according to their industry. Employees should not share their PPE, especially any PPE that is placed on their employee's face. So make sure that you do have some sort of guidelines and that you're monitoring all this, like safety policies within your workplace. For telecommuting, one of the things that we recommend is that for employers that are going to be having employees working from remotely from home, we definitely recommend for every employer to have a telecommuting acknowledgement agreement between the company and employee, making sure that they have a structure as far as, what the structure within the agreement, pretty much stating their work schedule, making sure that employees are taking the meal and rest breaks when they're supposed to, even though they're working from home. That does not relieve the employer from having employees taking their meal and rest breaks. Make sure that they have a job structure and deadlines for any projects they're working for. Follow up for projects. Overtime approval. If an employee is working telecommuting and they're actually working additional hours, that may not have been approved, the employer still has the responsibility to compensate the employee. So make sure that that information is also outlined for overtime approval, time off request and approval process. I know that some people will where they're gonna go, right? If they're stay at home, but they might have an emergency. So you have to still have a protocol for time off request and approval process. And also if you're gonna be giving any property guideline, property equipment to your employees to take home with them, make sure that you also define that within your telecommuting agreement. And this is just, to make sure that the company is in agreement with the employee. And then one of the other things that we recommend is for daily check-ins and with a set time, maintain feedback and have a plan to address any potential issues. Even though they might be working from home, you have to have a plan to address any potential issues. So that would be some of the points that I wanted to cover today. Thank you so much for the opportunity of coming and sharing this information with all of you guys. I wanted to make it short and quick. So thank you for your attention. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. It will be a pleasure, like I said, to serve you. And if you have any questions, I'm open right now to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Liz. A lot of great information. things I would have never even thought of for, employees that are working from home. I know my wife's working from home, and you do have to, make sure you have a contract. That's a good idea. And discuss what you're expecting from them. When are they going to take their breaks? When are they going to take meal breaks? What are their hours? It's not just when they decide to wake up and roll out of bed versus when they go to sleep. Just great information all around. Liz is a wealth of information. If anybody needs anything, her information was up there real quick. It'll also be in your recap email as well. So I didn't see any questions in the chat. Oh, the question right here, Liz has from Marianne to Liz. People returning to work, what about parents who can't return due to homeschooling? How does that work with unemployment?
That is an excellent question. Thank you so much, Marianne, for asking the question. That would be touched on the FFCRA. There is an exception for businesses that if they have fewer than 50 employees, they can make an exception for their business. Cahue Enterprises can actually help you write an exception in the form of a memo to communicate to your employees. Even though they might not qualify for the benefits through the FFCRA, it is important that you still try to make accommodations for those individuals that need to take time off. Also, some of the business are adopting, if they can accommodate the employee due to the fact that they are a key employee, they have a position that they can replace that easily. So they can make accommodations, but it is highly recommended that businesses do implement policies to make things clear for their employees, especially right now with the FFCRA that is pretty much federal mandated requirement, which employers have to comply with. In addition to that, you have to make sure that if you are a business that is choosing to exempt themselves from the providing family or sick time pay for employees that are opting to choose to use their benefit for childcare, if you're making an exception for your business, make sure that you are communicating that to your employees at the time that you're restating them. Also, at the same time that you're giving them the FFCRA notice. So there's going to be, that is the key component. You're going to give them the notice where it is mandated for you to give it to your employees, but you're also giving them their notice as what you're going to be exempt from. So that way, if down the road they decide to use that benefit, it doesn't show as you're retaliating or not wanting to provide that benefit. So that is a key factor for this, benefit for the employees.
Awesome. And then Emily also posted in the chat, for those of you that didn't see it, because the state has direct influence over our reopening, she always recommends business owners look at the state guidance and industry checklists. She finds the industry guides and toolkits to be most helpful and practical when trying to answer some questions. So at this time, if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat. But we have made it through everything. I want to thank everyone very much, especially our speakers, for being with us today. A lot of great information, and we really, really do appreciate you. Thank you to all the people in the real estate power team of Temecula Valley who have worked so hard to put this together. Great job. And most of all the people that have made it on the call today and have been with us. We greatly appreciate you. Our goal is to provide as much information and to support all of you rock stars as well. So if we have any other questions, we'll leave it open for a minute.
I have one more question.
Go for it.
One of the things that has come up in some different conversations was the liability standpoint for employers if employees were to come back and say, they did contract COVID. What would be the liability to the owners of these businesses? Is there any kind of protection in place for them as they're trying to get employees back to work if something like that were to happen? And how do they go about the next step if that was to happen?
So that is a very good question. And one of the things that we are recommending is that for employers is that implement safety policies in your workplace. Have a safety work policies within the workplace. And that is something that is going to show good faith that you are following protocol. And, one of the, one of the things that I've seen a lot of business owners struggle with is that I don't want my employees to wear a mask. But what if your employee actually contracts the COVID, right? When the employee is being exposed to the public, then that is going to open a potential liability for workman's compensation claim. So we have to keep in mind that that is an airborne, sickness that can be in the air, or, if somebody coughs or sneezes into the employee. So that would be while they're on their shift, that will have to be covered on workman's compensation if the employee alleges it was due to work related. So, and I know if you have one employee, you used to have to follow the workman's compensation policy. And that is the reason why we are strongly recommending to implement safety guidelines within the workplace. And, for instance, if you have one, but then you have two, now that's going to become more of a critical situation for any business owner that, have employees working without any safety equipment, without any safety policies. So, there is a lot of things that they have to implement before considering reopening. And just to kind of answer the question, I did had a meeting with my workman's compensation carriers, and they were actually saying that right now, because everything is so new, it still falls on the gray line, which it doesn't alleviate the employer from being, and it doesn't alleviate the employer for having to file a workman's comp if an employee is sick with the COVID at work. And that's the reason we recommend the policies.
Got it.
Matt, just one quick little thing on that, from an advocacy side, because obviously Chambers, we advocate for businesses on a regular basis. There is a lot of discussion going on both in Sacramento and in DC regarding this topic. There is a huge push in Sacramento and DC for one of them to kind of issue, even if it's on a temporary basis, some sort of moratorium on liability for employers, because and there's discussion on how that has to look, because there has to be some sort of guideline as to, as long as you're doing the right things, then there can be some. So but there is a ton of it. And so as we start to see more about this, and if we hear more of either legislation that's coming forward or just even discussions that need some potential pushes, I know myself and Emily and Tony will all get information out to you guys to help kind of push that forward, because that's going to be critical for businesses moving forward.
Awesome. All right. Anybody else have any parting words before we say goodbye?
I just want to say thank you to all you guys, Emily, Patrick, Tony Lowe, and Gene. You guys really have small businesses back, and thank you so much. We appreciate you.
All right. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and end. Thank you very much. Again, you will receive a recap email as well as contact information for everybody that spoke today. We also were on Facebook Live. So all the Facebook Live people, thank you very much for watching us. We didn't have any questions as far as I know on that side. So for today, we're signing out. Have a good day.